What if Australia got split? Australia is located in the southern hemisphere and is the sixth biggest country in the world. It got its independence from the United Kingdom in 1901, well, sort of, completing the procedure 40 years later with the Statute of Westminster Adoption Act in 1942. Australia occupies an area of 7.6 million square kilometers, consisting by the mainland of the Australian continent, the island of Tasmania and numerous smaller islands. Officially, Australia is a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy, governed by the Queen of Australia, which is the Queen of the United Kingdom, the Governor-General of Australia and the Prime Minister of Australia. Currently it has 6 states and 3 mainland territories, along with some other overseas territories. The 6 states are New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, Victoria, Western Australia and Tasmania. And yes, this part is not a state. This is one of the 3 mainland territories and is called Northern Territory. The other 2 are the Australian Capital Territory, which is the capital of the country, and the Jervis Bay Territory. Okay, we just started and things get out of hand, so let's explain some basic things about Australia. First of all, the Northern Territory. This region was part of the South Australia state, although the governing body decided to split these 2 areas because, let's face it, this is not South Australia. The uninspiring name of Northern Territory was not satisfactory for the Australian governing body as well, so other names were proposed. However, the name change never went ahead. Although if the Northern Territory was to become an independent country, there are still 3 alternative names. First proposal would be the Kingsland, named after King George V, complementing the state of Queensland. Another name would be Centralia, and an even less inspiring name would be Territoria. Even if I don't like 3 of the 4 names right there, I kinda understand the theme. Even the whole country of Australia's name is part of this theme. Before the Europeans were to discover Australia, they theorized that there should be a large landmass in the southern hemisphere. The name of it was Terra Australis Incognita, which means the Southern Unknown Land. Even though the original name of this country was New Holland, the name Australia then prevailed. So you see the theme there: Australia, Territoria, Centralia. So let's see how our new countries would be formed from west to east. First country would be the Western Australia. Western Australia is familiar to acts for independence since the Federation's formation in 1901. The self-governance idea has been a serious political issue for the state. And in 1933, a successful state referendum took place, with Australia's gaining independence, but it was never implemented. The country would be 2.6 million square kilometers, being the 10th largest country in the world, just a tad smaller than Kazakhstan. The capital would be the city of Perth. The main economic activity would be mining, having a substantial GDP of $217 billion. But because 1/3 of this country is uninhabited, only 2.6 million people will call this place home. The current Western Australia flag is a blue ensign featuring a black swan in a yellow background, although an unofficial flag has been proposed, which will be the most logical scenario if Western Australia is to become independent. The next country would be the Northern Territory, although I would like Kingsland much more as a new name. Only 250,000 would live in this country, and most would be based in Darwin, the capital. It would be a poor country compared to their neighbors, with a GDP of only $25.8 billion. Covering an area of 1.419 million square kilometers, this country would be the 19th largest in the world, just above Peru. Actually, the Northern Territory would be the only mainland country that would not feature the blue color in their flag. The Northern Territory is home to famous sightseeing like the Jim Jim Falls, the Leicester Highway, and of course, Uluru, the famous Ace Rock. Next up, South Australia. South Australia would be an agricultural country because it occupies most of the fertile soils in the whole of the continent. Over 1.7 million people would live in this country, covering an area of 1 million square kilometers. This would be the 28th largest country in the world, followed closely by Mauritania. Their economy would be moderate, with a GDP of $111 billion. But their geographic position would be very smart, as they would share borders with every other country of the continent, controlling the trade routes. The flag of South Australia would be the blue ensign, along with the pippin strike, which is the emblematic bird that appears in the South Australian flag. An alternative flag would be the one that was used for 6 years, from 1870 to 1876, featuring again the blue ensign, containing the Southern Cross and the 2 pointers Alpha and Beta Centauri. Next up, Queensland, the second largest country of the Australian continent, covering an area of 1.8 million square kilometers. This would be 15th place in the world rankings, just above Sudan. The country would have a population of 5.2 million people and a very strong economy with a GDP of 361 billion US dollars. A pretty strong economy, but not the strongest one. Queensland's environment would help tourism because it is very diverse, as you can see jungles, mountains, corals, and large urban areas. The flag of Queensland dates from 1876 with minor variations, but mainly features the blue ensign, the Maltese cross, and the imperial crown. Because this name was named after Queen Victoria, it is very likely an alternative would be used, featuring the Queen's portrait as it did in 1870, although the flag of Brisbane is very unique and very cool, so I would prefer this flag for Queensland. An even stronger economy would be Victoria, with a GDP of 468 billion US dollars. This country would have a population of 6.6 million people, covering an area of 237,000 square kilometers, and the majority of the population would live in the capital, Melbourne. Victoria's flag can be a matter of discussion. The current Victoria flag features the blue ensign with the Southern Cross along with the British crown. Although if you want to get independence, a different flag should be used. There are 2 alternatives. The one is the Southern Cross, and the other is the Australian flag proposal back in 1984, which of course was dropped, but who knows. Victoria is the home of the most famous geological sightseeings. Among them, the 12 Apostles, 12 upright rocks, well, not anymore 12 because some of them collapsed, and of course, the Island Archway. The last new country of the mainland would be the New South Wales. Home of 8.1 million people would be the most populous country of the region. The total area covered would be 809,000 square kilometers, being the 35th largest country in the world, but one of the wealthier countries in the world with a GDP of 629 billion US dollars. The capital would be Sydney, with the famous opera. The New South Wales flag would be very much like the current Australia, adding the British Commonwealth lion along with the stars. I know I told you this would be the last country in the mainland of Australia, but there is also a special case. The Australian Capital Territory, which consists of the Jervis Bay area and the Canberra region, would be home of 500,000 people, covering an area of 2.4 thousand square kilometers. This country would be not very functional because of several issues. First of all, it doesn't have its own economy. Because it is the Australian Capital Territory, it doesn't depend on mining or trades or tourism or anything like that. Also would be problems with connecting the port in Jervis Bay area with Canberra. Unless there were some special border agreements with New South Wales. But if Australia was split in different countries, the most likely scenario would be that the Australian Capital Territory would be assimilated by the New South Wales. But if the Australian Capital Territory was about to get independent, this would be the flag. Moving away from the mainland, we find Tasmania. This islandic nation would be the home of 500,000 people, covering the area of 90,000 square kilometers. Their economy wouldn't be that large, having a GDP of 33.7 billion US dollars. This country would have a pretty special flag, resembling that of the Central African countries. Tasmania is named after Dutch explorer Abel Tasman, the first European to sight the island in 1642. This country would be very special, as it would be the only one that you could witness the Aurora Australis, or the Southern Lights, see the desolated pavement, a rare geologic formation, and meet the Tasmanian Devil. Australia has also 7 external territories. Although in the separation scenario most of them would be assimilated from other countries, let's talk about them one by one. First is the Ashmore and Carter Islands. These 2 small islands cover an area of roughly 200 square kilometers, but they are uninhabited. Given their geographic position, it is very likely that these two islands would be assimilated from Western Australia. The next external territory is the Australian Antarctic territory. Currently, Australia unofficially occupies a small territory from Antarctica. This occupation only serves scientific research, and by law it is prohibited to claim parts of Antarctica. It is very hard to predict which of the newly formed countries of Australia would manage this region. It is very likely though that this territory would be split in sub-territories for all newly formed countries of Australia in percentage. You see, there is an area of roughly 5.9 million square kilometers up for grabs, and a non-permanent population, research station with fluctuating staff members that could be shared along the new countries. The Christmas Island would be the new micronation, home to 1,843 people, covering an area of 135 square kilometers. Given the fact that the island is tiny and has a very small population, the GDP is considerable, with $52 million. This would make a very likely scenario that the Christmas Island could become an independent country. The capital would be the Flying Fish Cove, with an airport at the outskirts of the city. The island is home to very rare crab and bird species. The Cocos Islands are a very small archipelago in the Indian Ocean. These islands have a population of just 547, covering an area of 14 square kilometers. The West Island is the capital right now, but it is very unlikely that these islands could become independent, because of the limited tourism and the even more limited natural and economical resources. These remote islands could be assimilated from Western Australia, but in a very surprising scenario, we can see Indonesia claim these islands as well. Who knows? The Coral Sea Islands is an uninhabited archipelago just offshore of Queensland. For that reason, I don't see any reason for them to be independent. So it is very much likely that the newly formed Queensland may assimilate these islands. Heard and McDonald Islands. These two islands are at the very far end of Australia's Commonwealth. Basically, they are located in the middle of nowhere. With no economic activities nor scientific facilities, these islands are uninhabited. They are so remote that they are closer to Antarctica than Australia. But if one of the newly formed countries of Australia was about to assimilate these islands, this could be Western Australia, given its geographic position. The Norfolk Islands are located between Australia and New Zealand. This island is so rich to pine trees, they even feature them in their flag. Covering an area of 35 square kilometers, the capital of this island nation would be Kingston, home to 1,758 people. This island is slightly richer than the Christmas Islands with a GDP of $60 million. It is located in a very strategic place which, in case of independence, they can control the trade routes between Australia and New Zealand. Not so bad. Oh, and this island is so small that this is the government's house. It is also home to very cute birds. If Australia was split in different countries, it would be very likely that 11 new countries would emerge. Although this scenario is not very possible, it was fun to discuss anyway. If you have any questions or suggestions for another country, please let me know down in the comments. There will be more videos like this in the future, so make sure to subscribe to How&Why to get notified first for new uploads. Thank you for being here today, see you next time!